Sound production, take one.
お名前はじゅんです。
あかりです。
塚本文です。伊庭桜子です。
Welcome back to another episode of Cinema Dream. I'm Kip.
And I'm Mad Cat Melody.
Today on Cinema Dream, we will be discussing Happy Hour. Happy Hour was my choice. I'm a huge fan of this director. Before I hop into the summary, Mad Cat, did you find this film enjoyable, somewhat enjoyable, unenjoyable, or somewhat unenjoyable?
Somewhat enjoyable.
All right. For me, I found this enjoyable. So, if you've already listened to one of our episodes, then you will know that we spoil things. If you do not want this film spoiled and you intend to watch it, please do not listen to this video because we're going to spoil the entire film. Okay, time for a summary. Happy Hour was released in 2015. It's directed by Hamaguchi Ryusuke, whose most recent Oscar-winning work is 2021's Drive My Car. That's my favorite film. In addition to directing Happy Hour, he also co-wrote the project along with Nohara Tadashi and Takahashi Tomoyuki. Hamaguchi and Nohara would see themselves reuniting on 2020's Wife of a Spy. I haven't seen that yet, but I do plan on watching it. Right, so pivoting back to Happy Hour, the film details the lives of four middle-aged women living in Kobe, Japan. The first of the four friends is Akari, played by Tanaka Sachie. Akari is a divorced nurse who is kind, caring, and really not shy when it comes to speaking her mind. Next is June, played by Kawamura Rira. June is a bit of a free spirit who's also unemployed and unhappily married. In addition to June, we have Sakurako, played by Hazuki Kikuchi. Sakurako is a housewife. There's a lot more to her character than that, but I'll go into detail later on her. Wrapping all of that up, out of the four friends we have left, Fumi. Fumi is played by Mihara Maiko, who is also married and an art administrator. So yeah, the film details their lives in a very, I would say, time-wise, intricate manner. The elephant in the room, this film is 5 hours. It's actually, I believe, a little bit over 5 hours. Mad Cat, would you agree?
It is over 5 hours.
Yeah, wasn't an issue for me, but I can see how it might turn people off. Okay, let's hop into it. Mad Cat, you want to start?
Okay, so I feel bad because there might be a long string of movies where I end up saying somewhat enjoyable because, like this movie, there were scenes that I enjoyed and there were other scenes. And the scenes that I enjoyed, particularly, took advantage of this long runtime. The first one was the workshop at the beginning with the artist, where they all the women come together as they do once a month or once every couple months, and decide to sign up for this workshop. And they go and they sit down and they listen to this guy talk. He's an artist, and then he asks everybody to get up, and it's going to be an interactive workshop where they're all going through real activities. I thought that was amazing cinema because you have these actors who, oh, that's another thing I liked, is I liked all the women and how different they were, their personalities and their look, and the women playing the women were very good at playing their roles, so that's one of the reasons it worked for me. So in this scene, they're all getting up and they're all doing these activities with each other where they're supposed to get into various physical poses and lean on each other and trying to communicate non-verbally with each other. And I was captivated. It only worked, I think, because I was watching the movie alone, which normally I don't want to watch movies alone. But that was kind of necessary for this movie because it's 5 hours.
You couldn't get anybody to watch it with you.
I mean, I don't have a dog, so no.
What's that say about me? Go on.
So I'm watching it, and when I'm alone, my brain goes to a lot more inclusive and like introspective and quiet analytical thoughts, as opposed to like, hey, let's have some fun. And so I was wondering what everybody would be thinking in the scene, the characters as well as the actors, because I felt like a lot of these activities lent themselves to being like, if I was an actor and I was called onto set that day to be in this workshop, I might have, a sheet to look at and be like, oh, this is my personality traits or these are my lines. But a lot of that the experiences, a lot of the expressions I would be having would be genuine because they're doing these things. They're leaning on each other and they're balancing and they're doing these actual fun activities. And I felt like you could actually see like humanity and their personhood through the characters because I could be there. It could be me there. It could be someone I know there. And it would be a similar experience, although obviously maybe it wouldn't. And that's what I meant when I said I think it only works because I was watching it alone, because my experience watching a movie changes drastically depending on who I'm watching with. Certain people I could watch this with, they would be bugged the whole time. Like, this is so boring. This is the most boring thing. I can't believe you made me watch this.
Yeah, I do think that would be like a very common sentiment.
Right. If I was watching it with almost anybody else. For instance, I don't think, like, when I'm looking for someone in my mind, going through the black book in my head of people that I would ask to watch this with me, it's hard to find someone who wouldn't have that reaction.
Mm.
Out of the people I know, obviously not out of
Oh,
the
I mean,
entire.
same. There's literally no one that I personally know that will watch this film. That's not a slate to the film. I just want to be clear.
You're not slighting the film.
Yeah.
Right. No, me neither, because I think, and maybe this is me being highfalutin. Sometimes I think I can see things that other people don't see, right?
That's fair.
Which is a dangerous idea to have because it's easy to fall into the trope of like, I like something, somebody else doesn't like something. Oh, they just didn't get it, right?
Well, that's pompous. There is times where people just don't get it, but you have to come to that conclusion based off what they say. You can't just say, "Oh, they just didn't get it," and they never give them the opportunity to
Right. You have
explain.
to think about it. So I was thinking about it when I was watching this. I was like, what is the difference between what I'm getting out of this scene versus what everybody else would put down about this scene? And I'm thinking, for one thing, I have a very strong desire, and I'd like to hear your opinion on this because we're two very different people. I have a very strong desire for like acceptance and being part of a group and being able to communicate with other people, right?
Mhm.
And so the idea of communicating non-verbally sounds like magic to me. I would eat that idea up. The possibility of being connected with people without saying a word, that sounds beautiful to me. So I was thinking, what is it about this scene that I would get? And I think I feel very vulnerable when I'm with other people, and I want other people to feel vulnerable around me. And I think somebody, for instance, I did bring my wife in after I'd seen the whole movie. I brought her in to see just that scene, which
Mhm.
is a little bit of
She's
like
probably like, "What the is this?"
right, like, it doesn't help it that she doesn't know what came after and she doesn't know what comes before, but at the same time, I was thinking, because when I was watching it, I was like, if I had seen this just as, like, a 20-minute YouTube video, of this guy trying to sell me on his new workshop, would I think it's interesting? And definitely, I would go if it was free, right? Right? That would be my instinct.
Okay.
If it was a whole bunch of money, I'd be like, maybe I could do this at home. So there is that one thing that you might say, oh, it's not, because she had pretty much the reaction that I thought she would have. She was like, oh, this is the most boring thing. But at the same time, you might think, oh, it's not good for her because she doesn't know what came after and she doesn't know what comes before. But it doesn't really, I would say, you might have a different opinion. I would say there's not that much that comes before that scene. And also, as much as I thought about that scene during that scene, I wasn't thinking about that scene that much towards the end of the movie. So I thought maybe you might have a different experience.
For that scene,
Yeah, because I felt like it was very separate from other things in the movie. And so to me, it didn't seem that crazy to watch it by itself.
I think if you watch the entirety of the film, you'll come to appreciate that scene a lot more.
Like if I watch the movie and then I go back to that scene again.
You don't even have to go back because if you watched it, then you saw that scene as long as you were paying attention. I just think it'll
Mhm.
make the sentiment really set in a lot more. The scene to me, yeah, I thought it was a beautiful scene. I think that, as you said, we are different. So for me, it would be something that's very uncomfortable because I don't open up. So for me, it would be really difficult.
If you were in the scene, it would be uncomfortable, or it was
Yeah,
uncomfortable
for
watching
sure,
it.
for sure. If I was in the scene, I'd be a wallflower. I'd be like, "Well, let me know when you guys are done. I'll be outside smoking a cigarette."
So what was it about the scene that you liked?
Even though I don't want to participate for our own separate issues, I can understand the beauty of it, connecting without words, relying on a stranger, learning to trust, learning to open yourself up,
Mm.
and building a bond from silence. I
You
can
just don't want to do that with people.
nah. No, but I'm aware of my host of issues. Uh, hey, I'm honest.
Yeah, that's what was crazy to me
uh,
because I was like, I love this, and the reasons I love this are the opposite of what I would like. I would expect you to love it too, but we're so
I
different.
did. No, I think we both loved it for the same reasons. I just think it's something that you would do and something that I'd be extremely reluctant to do.
Mm.
But we both love it for the same reasons. With this scene, I don't know if we said it, maybe we did. It's a trust building exercise, but it's not simply like, oh, stand up and across from the person in front of you and then fall backwards and they'll catch you or whatever. It's not like they do multiple exercises and it does get difficult. One of the most intimate, probably anxiety inducing exercises is placing your head on a stranger's stomach to hear them breathing, was it?
Yeah, well, to hear like their innards, right?
Yes, yes.
All the
Um,
fluids and the juices flowing.
which is something that's extremely intimate.
Right.
And another was
Probably the most intimate thing they did. I think. Well, maybe that's
yeah,
because
for sure it was. Yeah, placing your head on someone's stomach.
I'd much rather have them hear my heart than my stomach.
Well, you don't have boobs, so
Uh,
maybe women would be like, "Nah, bro, stomach." So that's the scene that stood out most for you in the film, yeah?
that's one of the top two scenes for me.
How did you feel about the instructor of the bond breaking experience? How did you feel about his character?
Well, at first, he just seems like a literary device, right? Because he's kind of detached, he's kind of nonchalant, kind of matter of fact.
Yeah, you don't expect him to be there later.
Right. But what's interesting is that I thought, oh, you're not supposed to pay attention to him, right? And then when he comes in later, he's matter of fact and nonchalant to a fault, to the point where like he doesn't care about other people and humanity and feelings and stuff. So I
There's
liked.
work him and then
Well, I liked that you could see the through line between those two things because
right.
at first it just seems like he's not a character in the movie because he's so like machine-ish. So later when you see him as like because in these social situations being matter of fact and not caring about other people's feelings can be destructive. He's a lot bigger personality later
Yeah.
on. So that was a nice like surprise,
Yeah.
you know?
Hamaguchi, the director, has a very interesting way of bringing characters into the story. And you're like, whatever, this is an NPC in a video game. I'm just
Yeah.
going to do this mission and then that's it.
Yeah.
I'll never see them again. And then
Break
they
his
pop
pots in
back
his
up.
living room and I'll never see him. Yeah.
Exactly. And they mean so much to the story, or they add a lot of weight to it.
Yeah.
I feel like it's clever because it's a mechanic. I don't know, for some reason, I don't know why. I haven't really thought about it in this way, but it's very intriguing how he introduces certain characters. And it doesn't, I never got the feeling because the instructor of the seminar, his sister is also introduced.
Yeah, and she's in there and you have no idea if she's the sister until later.
Yeah, in
That
fact,
was a nice reveal. I was like, "Oh, you're a person too."
because the way that she enters, she seems like a bitter ex girlfriend.
Yeah, I felt like that was such a beautiful the way she acted it cuz I would
Yeah.
look at her face when he would say certain things and I was like, he and her have a history. You could tell they had a history. You find out she's a sister and I was like, "Oh."
And even the character Akari, she's like, "You guys are like a couple." And she was like, "That's my brother." She's like, "Oh."
Yeah, and you know what was amazing? Because this was about me, something I learned about myself. When you find out she's the sister, because at first I was like, wow, she's not nice. And then when I found out she was the sister, I was like, oh, that makes sense. That's fine then. Like in personally, to me, in my brain, I was like, oh, that's the rightful place of a sister, but not of like an ex girlfriend. That's annoying of an ex girlfriend, but as a sister. Maybe it's because she knows, like, as an ex girlfriend, like you had a tryst or whatever. But as a sister, you might have known that person their whole lives, so you have more authority.
And she even says that, there are hints dropped in. It's just you assume the other.
Yeah,
Because she's like, "You're so annoying. You're always so annoying. Why do you act like that?"
yeah,
And he has this persona going on that the women are still accustomed to because they literally just left the seminar and they go for drinks.
right. He's benefiting from a position of authority.
Right. And as soon as his sister sits down, she just starts
Yeah,
tearing into him. You don't find out that she's a sister to the end of this 5-hour film. And I would say that their dinner together, where she was tearing into him, where she was first introduced, happened within the first, 40 minutes of the film, would you say?
yeah, probably.
So it's interesting. It's very intriguing how he chooses to introduce some characters. He did it with the husband too. He did it with June's husband. June's husband was introduced and he didn't have as much screen time as Fumi's husband. June is the one that's unemployed and unhappily married, and Fumi is the one who is married. So I was expecting to see Fumi's husband more because he got so much screen time. And so did Sakurako's husband, the salaryman. He also got a lot of screen time because Sakurako was with her husband and her son as well. And when they showed June's husband, it was very passively. And then he becomes, I would say, a mainstay fixture towards the latter half of the film. And I don't know. I don't know. It's something that in terms of how certain characters are introduced, is something that you can't see happening. But by the end of it, you're like, oh wow, I didn't expect them. They were totally a wallflower, and now they're at the
Yeah.
forefront.
And that's another thing that I kind of like in the workshop, where to me it's like this fantasy. I want to go into that fantasy world where people just, I don't want to say touch each other, but like can get
Yeah,
close to each other,
don't be
right?
weird.
Right? But it's the same thing where it's like some people I'll see people together and I'll be like, "Oh, how did you guys meet?" And they'll be like, "Oh yeah, he was my plumber's brother, and I met him one day. We had pizza because they finished my plumbing, and then we just became friends." And I hear stories like that, and I'm like, "That's so amazing to just pluck somebody out of like the random sea of billions of people and to build a relationship with them." And that's kind of what it feels like in the movie, where this is this person, I'll never see it again, like a cashier, and then you see them at the airport, and they're going to be on a 14-hour flight with you, or in this case, a 5-hour flight with you. And I love the idea of that happening, I want that to happen to me more, even if it's these people that are kind of not very
Yeah, I don't know. This is the last I'll harp on it, but I don't know how he does it because normally I feel like if a character is there as a wallflower and you don't expect anything other than that from them, and then they come into the film and now all of a sudden they're this character that's secondary when before they were further than tertiary, it would feel forced. I feel like my normal thought would be like, why is this character important now? But it doesn't happen with this film.
I think naturally, if you see someone, and the first time you see someone, you're going to think they're not important, right? And then the second time you see someone, your idea may or may not change. But the more you see someone, I would think naturally, the more important you're going to assume that they are, right?
Well, no, it's like today's film techniques. Like they typically, if it's a character that's gonna be prevalent later on in the film, they either give them an extended sequence or like a camera hold, and this doesn't happen here. Most of the time, as far as the instructor goes, you see him, but most of the time, what you're seeing is the people doing his exercises and him speaking in the background, off camera. So can you think of another film where characters are introduced in such a non-grandiose manner?
I'll have to think about it. I didn't do enough research to try and think.
I can't. I'm like running through the library of films in my head and
What I've been seeing more and more happen now, which is fun, but I think I would prefer this, is a movie and like 2/3 of the way through the movie they introduce this new character who's this big actor and it's like, oh wow. And I would prefer it if you saw them in the background, first. It's harder to do with big actors because you're going to pay attention to that guy, but that's a beautiful, if they had a character in the beginning, because like there's movies like Collateral where if you watch the first few minutes of Collateral, the Tom Cruise Jamie Foxx movie, Jason Statham is in the airport and he bumps into Tom Cruise. And I remember watching the movie and being like, hey, that guy looks like Jason Statham. And then being like, wait, that is Jason Statham, right? And then he's nowhere in the movie ever again.
was he Jason Statham when that film came out though?
Uh,
That's a pretty old film. Like I feel like he blew up like 3 or 4 years after that film. His big international success was the first Transporter, right?
right, which is 2002. And Collateral was 2004.
Oh, okay.
So I feel like Jason Statham was big enough, but maybe they started filming. I don't know if it had something to do with that or if it was a stunt or what. But to me, when I saw that little clip of Jason Statham, I was looking for him in the rest of the movie. Eventually, I forgot about him because it's a good movie. You said something. You had a reaction when I said I didn't think there was much that happened before the workshop scene,
Mm.
and you sounded like maybe you had a different opinion.
I'm trying to remember what occurred. The film starts off with them going through a tunnel.
Right. I knew you would remember the tunnel.
Why? Why is that?
Well,
What is the?
because
Is that sarcasm? I don't understand.
no,
What do you
it's
mean?
not. You know why the tunnel is memorable. Do you not?
Fill me in.
So there's a long scene, and long is relative because it's a 5-hour movie. But there's a long scene in the beginning where they're in this on this tram that's going through a tunnel, and it at first it's dark, and then there was light, right? So you start seeing the tunnel, and it's getting bigger and bigger, and it's going up towards the light, which is also kind of neat. I didn't think about it that much. And so because the light is coming from the back, everybody in the tram is in silhouette. It's like the time when credits would be coming, so you're not really paying attention to the screen because it's mostly still black. It's just silhouette of these ladies. And then once they get out of the tunnel, there's this amazing illuminating shot where the main characters of the movie are suddenly lit by the natural light of coming out of the tunnel, and you've been looking at them the whole time. And it's a neat little revelation. Why did you remember the tunnel?
Well, you remember that Fumi's husband was kind of showing that young novelist around.
Yeah.
And the main four women in the story, I believe, are 37. Young novelist is, I would say, at the most like 25. And Fumi's husband takes a liking to her and her personality and her stories, but he also slightly has a crush on her. Not too big, he just thinks she's a pretty girl, but she likes him. We find out. She does a good job pretending like she doesn't. I'll give her that. But I remember the tunnel because of the allegory that it has with her story. Do you remember her novel? She did a meetup reading,
Yeah.
and you remember how she spoke about the character in the novel, and when the character was standing in the train and she was looking at the light flicker and specks on the ground, and how I thought it was first of all, I thought the story was really good. I thought she was an excellent storyteller. But when she was speaking about all these seemingly insignificant moments meant so much to her, it's like I guess the best way I could equate it is if the overload of sensories, if you're like a baby and you're open your eyes for the first time and you're seeing, hearing everything. This film is a lot of I don't even think it's a lot of this, but I'm just gonna say it has the same atmosphere as your extended contemplative silence slice of life. But I don't think it's a lot of silence in this film, to be honest, when I think about frame from frame.
Yeah, because I don't think it's a lot of scenes of people alone.
Within a 5 hour period, no, there's not. But a lot of characters are alone, even though they're not alone physically.
Oh.
You know, earlier I spoke about Sakurako and how I said she's a housewife. She's more than that, but I'll explain later. I think this is probably the easiest character to go through from this. Sakurako has a life that a lot of people may not mind, you know? She doesn't have a job. She has to take care of her kid and her family. Outside of that, she doesn't have any responsibilities. And I'm not diminishing the work that goes into that because a lot of it does. But she also has a lot of free time on her hands where she's just at home bored if her friends are busy. You can see how she's kind of discontent with her situation, but it's kind of tough because she's far in the game. You know, she's 37, her son's like 14 or 15, and she's lonely. She's lonely because her husband spends all his time at work, and when he is at home, doesn't seem like he really interacts. The only interaction she really has with someone outside of her friends every now and then is her husband's mother. There is no affection between her and her husband. They haven't slept together in a long time. He gets home, he's tired. Every time she tries to do something, he's like, "Oh, I got this meeting." You know, he has a lot of stuff. And the funny thing about it is he's not even cheating on her, because like that's like a go-to for some guys. They're like, "Oh, you know, I gotta work this business
I
meeting."
wouldn't know anything about
He's not, he really is having these meetings.
that.
But
That'd be a lesson, ladies.
but he's just not, he's a good partner, but he's not a good husband, which is a trapping that a lot of people probably fall into. But what do I know? I'm not married. So she's very lonely. And these women, it's like they're seen but not heard. And even when they speak, it's not, I don't want to say it's like, it's not necessarily like misogyny, but even when they're speaking to the person that is supposed to be the closest thing that they have, you know, their spouse, it's as if they're speaking to a roommate, you know, a roommate that doesn't really hang out with them often. Even with Fumi's relationship, I would say that she's probably the closest with her husband. Even still, it's a very sterile, clinical type of atmosphere with their relationship. I want to ask you this. There's a point where Sakurako admits that she slept with someone younger than her. And it was one of the guys that was at the seminar where you're like breaking down these boundaries between strangers. And she tells her husband, and understandably, he's not happy with that shit. But because of his upbringing and how he is, like he even says at a point, because he's not good at expressing himself or dealing with certain things, he says, the only way I know how to handle things. And when she tells him, he goes to work. And when he's going down the stairs, he kind of like trips and falls or whatever. But it's really because his heart and his brain was like, oh, damn, she fucking somebody else. It's a film. I can make light of it, whatever. So he falls and he gets up. She helps him up. You know, when she tells him, they agree that they're going to stay together. She makes it clear that she's staying home. You know, she's not divorcing him or anything, but she just tells him, she's like, I did it. And then he's walking on his way to work on this hot summer day and he collapses again and just breaks down. And I'm like, man,
Did you relate to that?
my wife never cheated on me because I don't have a wife. I did have a girlfriend that I'm pretty sure cheated on me, though. I will say that.
But she didn't tell it to your face. Stone face killer like
No, no. Well, she did say something that was interesting. It's weird when normally I would try not to think about it, but I'm old enough now to where I could care less. But I do remember her saying that I can love you and love someone else. She was talking about her ex. I remember just staring at her, and I just was silent because in my head I was like, I don't know. I was just like, how stupid are you? That was my thought.
You were saying how stupid are you to her or to you?
To both of us. I was like, how stupid am I for being in this relationship and how stupid is she? Sitting up here thinking like, oh, we in an open relationship when we're not, you know? If you love someone else, that's fine, but don't be in a relationship if that's not something that I'm approving of.
It's a weird thing to say in a relationship, but me personally, I've never like fallen out of love with someone. So how long did the relationship last after that?
This relationship in total was maybe like 2 years.
Wow, that's a good amount of time.
Yeah, but it was 2 years of hell. It was definitely my worst relationship for sure. But
What kept you so long?
finances, we had a place together. Neither one of us could afford a place by ourselves. But you know, now that you forced me to bring this up, I can say that I do kind of identify with Sakurako's husband in the sense that and this is not nothing that I didn't already know. I'm not good at expressing emotions at all. Somebody's like, I mean, I said it earlier, right? We were talking about that exercise that they were doing in the film for that seminar, and I was like,
Well, I would say you don't like expressing emotions with people and being vulnerable with people, but I wouldn't say you're bad at it.
anyways, going back to happy hour.
So there's that scene, right, where the husband he's trying to go to work and his feet are like, "No, you need to talk about this," and he keeps right.
Yeah, his body's like, no, bitch, it's time to cry.
I felt, if we're in the spirit of like, I felt like sometimes I'm thinking about a movie and I'm thinking about good acting versus bad acting. If I'm making a movie and I have a bad actor, right? I'm like, oh, I can make this work with nice camera angles, or show angles down from the top of them, or show them walking with their feet. You can do different things where it's implies a personality without actually closing in on their facial expressions. And you can have scenes outside. If they're in a coffee shop, you could have scenes outside that somebody's taking pictures and you
I
don't
get it,
actually.
mate.
Okay. So when I saw this in Happy Hour, I was like, oh, these seem like the type kind of techniques where you're showing somebody what's going on in their mind and their emotions without actually really acting it out. You know what I mean? Like he falls down the stairs off screen,
Hmm.
which is kind of fun because she's like, "What was that?"
They do that twice, right? Because it happened to
Right, and
Akane.
it was hilarious. I
Yeah.
shouldn't say hilarious.
But
Funny
no,
as
it
a
was,
girl.
when Akane fell, it was a little funny, yeah.
Yeah, because she was like, "You need to be more serious."
Yeah, it was definitely funny.
I felt like maybe that's a budget thing. Like stunts can be
Mm.
hard to insure and stuff, so smarter, more efficient. But when you have scenes like that are supposed to show someone's emotions and you have them happen off screen, there's a little deflation that happens. And then on the street, he's walking and everybody else is walking, and then he stops and he just like curls up into a little ball, right?
Yeah,
And you're kind of away from him, you know?
I wasn't. I was right there patting his back like,
Oh
I
yeah,
feel you, big dog.
you were
Don't get me
taken back
wrong. You're
like
not a good husband
2 years ago.
or the best father, but I feel your pain. I was there.
Yeah, see, you're honest. Like I said.
I think it helps that I can identify with it, to be honest, because it's like he's
Yeah,
not good at processing his emotions.
right.
And he lives in a society where his position is you die at work. You give
Mhm.
your all to your job, and your finances will support your family. And the wife does everything else. Your only duty is to work. And because he doesn't know how to process his emotions, I don't expect him to have like this melodramatic type thing. He's trying to hold it together and he's trying to keep it
Just
together. And
I just wanted to see the fall down the stairs.
I'm not even talking about the fall down the stairs. I'm talking about when he was outside.
Right, outside in the street. So there's a scene in The Sixth Sense, right? Where
You're doing a lot of references, big dog.
this is my
Please,
second reference.
it's your third. Please don't make it long. You did Collateral and you did The Watchmen.
Oh,
The
well,
Watchmen was long.
you asked
Yeah, I
me,
didn't
hey,
think you was going to know 8 minute spiel.
you said, hey, can you think of a movie? And I was like,
Yeah,
movie, let
you
me
could
think of
have
a
been like,
movie.
yeah, The Watchmen,
No, I
and
did.
then
It
you
took
would
it a while, and then eventually I came up with The Watchmen. That was my brain working. That's how my brain works.
you explained the whole sequence.
Anyway, so Bruce Willis, who
Oh
follows
my
his wife
god.
to work. Wait, you're making it long. He sees her like with a guy, right? And he's angry. So he punches the window. He's outside the window, the glass window. He punches the glass door and like walks away so that when they look, they don't see anybody there. They just see the broken glass, right?
Okay.
But when the camera pans to outside, you see him walking. So the glass gets broken off screen, kind of like the fall down the stairs, right?
Mhm.
But the walk away, he's acting in such a way you can tell he's aggravated, and it kind of looks like he's cuffing, even though it's from behind him, you can tell he's like cuffing his arm together, like he hurt himself, and you know, and it's so
Yeah.
quick too. Like the scenes in this movie tend to be very somber, slow, take your time kind
Are
of
you getting
pieces.
that you just couldn't see him really affected by this?
No, obviously he was affected. I just felt like it was not.
It didn't transfer to you very well.
Yeah, it wasn't as engaging emotionally as I wanted it to be.
I mean, the moment where she tells him, you can see his eyes are red and you can
Yeah,
see his
that was the
shoulders.
best part of that whole sequence.
Yeah, and
I
he's
think
tensing up. That's the moment where he says, I can only handle the things the best way I know how. And I know I'm not perfect, but I don't know any other way.
right.
His mom even says at a point, like, he's still that little boy that he was. He tries. Just be patient.
Yeah, that's so cute. But I felt like maybe the scene works when he's talking to his wife better because he has like another actor to act off of,
Okay.
you know?
I thought he did good for the role that was provided for him. I will say, I don't know about the side actors, but the main 4 women are not actors. This is their only role.
I wanted to ask you because I looked up one and I felt like one of them was a singer. When I looked up and I was like, is this just the same name? She has the same name as
Nope.
a famous
He
singer?
just he just plucked some people.
Well, that's amazing because the
I think
women,
they're phenomenal.
yeah, the women seem so much better than all the men in the movie.
I see a lot of films in general, and for the ones that are grounded in reality, a lot of them I'm like, I believe this character is a real character within this setting. But when watching Happy Hour, I was like, these are real women. Like these are legitimately real women that you could walk outside right now and you might run into one of them.
And that's what you crave. You don't have a real woman.
I'm not gonna.
No, what I meant when I said that's something you crave is you crave that feeling when you're watching a movie that they're real people that you're watching.
Oh,
Is that what you would say? I know how it sounds, but you know what I mean.
I wouldn't say it's. I wouldn't say it's something that I necessarily crave, but it's something that I was very appreciative of. Especially because they have no acting experience. And it's not like their roles requires like a Viola Davis performance, but they do a damn good job being these believable characters.
I could see Viola Davis playing Akari.
I can see her playing anybody because she's Viola Davis. She could play Sakurako's husband. When she falls down those stairs, you're gonna see it. She's gonna swan dive down those steps and you're gonna see all of it. Anyways, the thing about some foreign cinema is that sometimes you have to kind of have an idea of the sentiments that the film you have to have an idea of the country's sentiment that the film resides in, you know? You have to understand that atmosphere, not fully, but just a bit.
Yeah.
And a lot of times with some Asian cinema, specifically from Japan, it's easier just to hone in on one. I hear a lot of people saying, like, oh, they don't really react to anything because they're not as outwardly expressive as Americans. So I think that might turn a lot of people off if the 5 hour runtime didn't. But just understand, I've said this before, and I do feel like a broken record. Reacting to something isn't always just vocal. Look at the person's eyes, look at their posture, look at how they tense up, look at how their laugh lines on their face change. And if you do have patience and you do sit down and you watch this entire film, and you think they didn't really react to anything, then effectively, you are June's husband in the first half of the film, who just does not notice shit.
You jerk.
It's the truth. That was his problem. This film does so many things excellent, and one of them is like understanding why a woman may do the things that she does. I wanted to ask you, and I'll say how I felt. I wasn't as upset with Sakurako when she cheated on her husband.
As you were with June?
I wasn't upset with June. I think so many people are willing to demonize that, but when you really look at how these lives are, that doesn't mean that you condone it, but surely you can have some compassion.
I felt like the movie was kind of trying to show you their side of the story so that you would feel for them.
Okay.
And I was going to ask you what I missed. So there's levels to expression and how emotive someone is. So you're like in Japan, it's more normal in that culture to not be as loud and obnoxious.
Unless you're just drunk as hell and roppongi, but yeah.
Yeah. So when I look at this movie, I think that in some scenes, I was a high enough level to understand some of these women and what their lives are communicating to me. But at the same time, I feel like maybe there was a whole bunch of stuff I missed. And so when I wanted to ask you, because I felt very strongly like you were gonna say that exact same thing. In fact, the word excellent,
What thing?
where you were like, oh, you didn't feel as bad, about their infidelity, right? And so when I was watching it, I was trying to like squint and look at like, oh, I'm supposed to feel more sorry for her than I would normally in another movie, which is just about like hurt feelings or whatever. And I can understand it can be hard in a relationship when you don't feel like the other person is giving you all you need emotionally. I don't think that this movie showed, like I would say, and I've said it before, that these women, I was impressed with the emotion and the acting that they showed, but I don't think the movie showed me enough for me to get on their sides. So that when we go to the court scene, and she's like, she wanted her friends to come see her in the court scene.
I need to interrupt you quickly. There's a gigantic stigma when it comes to divorce in Japan. A lot of people are shamed. As long as and arduous as it is in America, it's like 3 times as hard there.
I know this is the lower level reading and the more like younger interpretation of that scene, but I watched that scene and she's like, "You guys got to come so you understand what I'm going through." And then you see the court scene, and I'm like, "This doesn't make you look better. This isn't what I like. I don't feel differently about you being here in this
That's
court."
interesting. Even when you heard everything that she said.
Well, because I felt like I could tell she felt bad, but I didn't feel, and maybe this is like, I remember who, like, so I like robots, right?
Okay.
Because the fantasy of robots sometimes is that you don't have to deal with a lot of these pesky side effect emotions that that are unnecessary. Um, so we're in the court scene, and obviously there's other scenes like the scene where the guy comes to her and she's like, "Oh, please, baby," and she puts the drink on his head and she's like, "I could kill you. I could kill myself. I could." Right?
Who are you talking about? Are you talking about June?
Yeah. You remember when the guy comes to her husband comes to her house and he's like, "Can't we settle this?"
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
Okay.
she's like, she
That was
calmly,
a that was a yeah.
which is also hilarious because she's like, "Hey, you want some tea? I'm gonna make some tea." And she goes and pours some tea and then just pours it like so slowly, delicately
She
makes this
wanted him to,
tea.
like, just divorce her.
Yeah, but I just imagine someone like comes over to your house, and you're like, "Oh, I don't want you to be here, but I'm gonna make food for the both of us." And you spend like an hour baking a like coconut cream pie just so that you can throw it in their face. That's hilarious. It'd be hard for me to contain myself if I was making a coconut cream pie. I set the timer for like 45 minutes, and I would just be struggling to hold down the
Well,
giggles.
she literally just made the tea. He, like, ambushed her when she got home from
But
her
the
job.
actions in the movie are so deliberate
Yeah, yeah.
from moment to moment. It doesn't seem like a bout of passion like in the last minute. You're like, "Ah, I can't drink tea because you're here and you're ruining my life." It didn't seem like that. It felt so premeditated. Everything about her character when in regards to him, except for the end, felt so premeditated that it was harder for me to feel bad for her. Maybe that's bad because if she was like this crazy, unhinged, emotional woman, that's not necessarily something I should feel more sympathy towards, but I think maybe I would. Maybe that's just me.
What were you gonna ask me? Because I wanna comment on that, but I don't wanna stop you.
Oh, what did I miss that made you feel for them? The infidels.
I think that of the 4 women, Akari as a Gaikokuzi, as a foreigner, Akari is the easiest to understand
Yeah,
if you
because
don't
yeah,
understand Japanese culture.
yeah.
I think with June, to me, when I look at, because effectively in the very beginning, June was very much so like Sakurako and Fumi. And Akari, by the public eye, typically would be seen as, oh, wow, what a rebel. And not in a good way, but like, what a nuisance. What a public nuisance. She's 37, divorced with no kids. Ugh. That's not a respectable woman. I feel like that's how the public, certain aspects of the public would see Akari, although I liked Akari.
Like the Western public.
Japanese.
Okay,
Or for Western, yeah, a bit.
because I think that's a little more accepted in the West.
It's definitely more accepted than Japan, but at the same time, a lot of my female friends have had to hear it. So when are you gonna have kids? So when are you gonna find a man?
Whenever I hear that, because I've heard, mother-in-laws and aunts and friends talk about that kind of thing, but that always seems like, in my experience, a sentiment from older generations. You know what I mean?
A lot of women that are older, like our age, they're not married with kids. A lot of people look at them as like alien or like just lonely and sad.
Mhm.
I want to focus back on what I was saying. For June, who is the one that's going through the divorce, within a context of Japanese culture, how I, a black man from America, would see June, she's a woman that broke free of the social constraints of Japan. There's a moment where she's just like, I don't care. And it's not a I don't care as in I give up, it's an I don't care as in I don't care, I'm gonna do the things that make me happy.
I'm glad you said that like that. I'm glad you worded that like that. So you admire her ability to live life on her own terms.
I think that it's amazing in general, but I think when you place it in a society that's the polar opposite from that, I think it's extraordinary.
Yeah, I can appreciate the strength it takes to go against the norm. I also question when it's necessary.
What do you mean when it's necessary?
Oh man. So like yes, what she's doing is hard. It's hard for her and it's hard for the people around her. And for her to keep going takes a lot of gumption, willpower. But at the same time, you can spend willpower on stuff that's not worth it. So the question becomes whenever you're going to undertake something really hard, like is it worth it?
Was it worth it for June to divorce?
And apparently June would say so, right?
Yeah, I know your mindset from our old podcast. Your mindset was, I don't know if it's changed.
Well, my mindset is if you make a promise, you make a promise.
If you're gonna say it that way, then yeah, sure. But like, I don't think anyone should be required to live a lifetime of unhappiness. Clearly, she was unhappy in her marriage. Clearly, she tried to connect with him. He doesn't understand. Too many people don't see a problem until it shows up at their doorstep. He doesn't understand until she's already filing those papers.
I don't think he understands even at the end.
The difference is at the end, he wanted to change and he was trying to understand. So that's the difference, but it's too late because, as she said to him, you had years. It's too late. I'm done. She just didn't love him anymore. In my opinion, that marriage is done. You don't need to stay in this silly blood contract. Who's the authority that says this is what is solidified forever? People change their minds, people change. And a document or somebody officiating something doesn't mean that you have to be miserable for all eternity because life's too short for that. It's not like she just woke up and she was like, I'm not trying, I'm divorced. You know, it just took him entirely too long. And it is what it is. And for her to do that when so many people, even her friends at a point, were judgmental of her, but her to continue to do it and her to have the strength to be like, no, you're going to come to my proceedings. You're going to see how it was for me. And they're silent and they're conflicted because they're the other women, not Akari, but Fumi and Sakurako. They're afflicted because they,
Conflict.
yeah, are trying to adhere to the standards that they were brought up on, but everything that she said is everything that they've been feeling. Fumi at the end of the film tells her husband that she wants a divorce. Fumi never probably would have said that if she hadn't known June and been there at June's divorce court proceedings. She never would have had the courage to do that. Sakurako never would have had a brief moment of joy. It was like she didn't even know what joy was fully. Even when they hung out, she would have fun, but it was as if it was the first time she ever had fun because she was confined in her house and she just was in prison. Effectively, these marriages for these women were prisons. June was the one that broke out of prison. She doesn't care how people perceive her. She only cares about enjoying life and having the freedom that she wasn't allowed, the freedom that was robbed from her. Because when you're in a marriage and you're an unhappy person in that marriage, and that marriage has been going on for years and years and years, you're in prison. So to see her go through all of this, all of these stigmas, and to see that her courage not only helped her, but helped her friends, I think June's an extraordinary character.
She lied about being physically abused. Is that correct?
Yeah, she said that there was a point where she was like, "No, he never hit me." And she even said to her friends, "There were some things that I made up because I knew the cards were stacked against me because I slept with someone else. Infidelity is a big thing." And even when she said it, she's being honest about it. And she's like, "Yeah, I lied." And Sakurako's like, "Right now, it's like I'm not even talking to my friend from high school. It's like I don't even know who you are." And it's because for a long time, Sakurako couldn't see her. She just saw the veil, the phoniness that everybody kept on through public appearances. You know, she couldn't see June for the real June. And it wasn't because she didn't know how, it's because she chose not to, because she didn't have courage. So yeah, June did say, she was like, yeah, he hit me. And then when she went to court, she was like, no, that was a lie. She answered everything honestly. And you can see when she's expressing her life and her marriage and how it was on a daily basis. The courtroom is entirely men outside of her friends. And you can see how they're like lacking any type of understanding of this woman's thoughts. And they're just like, well, she cheated and she lied. Which, yeah, those things are wrong, but there's so much more to it. But they don't care. They just look at it in a very robotic manner.
I like robots.
Yeah, I know. I mean, and you remember I told you before we sat down and reviewed this, where I was like, you gonna take this a certain way, and I understand, but you kind of remind me of husband. Not towards the end, I will say.
Not towards the end.
Because he's such a character that's very layered, where
So I remind you of him before he goes through his character development.
well, let me explain. To illustrate to the audience, I guess, at the end of the film, June leaves.
Hilariously.
They go on a trip, and everybody's like, okay, the trip was fun, let's go back. And everybody goes back separately, but June says she's going to stay for a couple days. And she's just staying indefinitely. She's just going to travel and she's going to live the life that she deserves to live. And her husband, now that he goes home every day and June's not there, even though they had like no interaction or whatever, just having her there was enough. But June's husband, he's like, I can't live without her. Because for him, he's like, I didn't understand her, but I didn't try to understand her. but now I know that I wasn't the best, and I'm not sure why in any ways, but I want to find her and I want to try again. And he's saying this to all of her friends while they're at dinner, sans June. Akadi's like, bitch, it's too late. You being real creepy out here. You had all these years. You had like a decade, bro. And now you trying to change? It's too late. Let it go. You understand that she doesn't love you anymore. And he was honest. He was like, yes, but I'm still gonna look for her because I need her. And Akari's eyes are just rolling in the back of her head. And Fumi's like staring at him like, what's wrong with you? But how he feels is he's nothing without her. So some people might see that as romantic. Some people might see that as disgusting. People might see it as
Yes.
caring or selfish.
It's interesting.
But I'm saying that before you go. I'm saying that to say that you don't remind me of that particular aspect where he's like, even though she doesn't love me, I'm gonna keep chasing her across this fucking island. That's not the aspect you remind me of. You remind me of him in the sense that when it comes to more emotional things, even if you understand them, they don't fully seem to resonate. So it's like a very surface level understanding, but not a holy type of understanding. You know what I mean?
Ye-
It's hard to put into words, to be honest.
I think you put it into words. You're a great communicator.
Shut up, bitch. Okay, go on.
So I think I'm glad you brought up that scene and how people can see it as romantic or people can see it as creepy, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Because I love the intersection of romantic and creepy. I love one of those two things. But also, I thought that. And I thought, well, in this movie where we're supposed to be siding with June, it kind of feels.
Are you? I think the movie said decide how you want.
I mean, yeah, the movie says that. The movie's like, decide how you want, you know? But so he's sitting here getting berated by all the friends, like, you idiot, it's too late. And he's like, well, nobody told me, you know?
I want to hear it from her. Like, bitch, she filed for divorce.
They're like, it's been 10 years. And he's like, yeah, it took 10 years for her to tell me there was a problem. And so he still doesn't get it, but he's like, one thing he knows is that if you care about something, you don't give up on it, right?
That's how he feels, yeah.
And that's something that is a sentiment that's shared by people who are hopeless romantics and also, I guess.
Right, but that in itself
Hmm.
is something that requires a party of two to agree. If you're saying that, oh, I care about this much, that this person has told me that they decided, but I refuse to accept it, at that point you're being selfish. Regardless of how much you want to romanticize it, you're taking away the choice from the other party.
Here's why this was beautiful. Because what he's doing, and I think he actually says the words like, I know what would make me happy. Being with her would make me happy. It's the only thing that would make me happy. So I'll chase her to the ends of the earth. Right?
Okay.
And yes, we do disagree maybe on the idea of marriage because I see marriage as a promise. But also
keep in mind, I'm the unexperienced one in this situation.
No, I'm not going to keep that in mind. I'm going to throw that away out of my mind into the trash.
In your mind.
But here's the thing. Him saying happiness reflects to me what you said about her and how she's going to do whatever it takes to put herself into happiness. And so is he. And this is the problem with happiness being people's number one priority is it causes chaos, right? Happiness can't be the number one reason for doing everything. And if it is, then he's just as heroic for going after her as she is for running away.
No. Chaos is only caused from lack of acceptance. With June's scenario, she gave it a chance. He failed. She took the initiative. He failed. He didn't fail once. He didn't fail twice. She's 37. More than likely, they got married when they were young. He failed for a long period of time. She gave him the papers after her love was entirely gone, and she filed for divorce. He refuses to accept. In order for that divorce to go away, they both have to agree to reunite. If one doesn't agree, then it doesn't matter how the other feels. It's a divorce. That's how it works. So June's search for happiness isn't selfish. It's June getting what she deserves and what she's lacked and what she should have got.
It's not selfish because she deserves it.
No, it's not because that's what in a marriage you're supposed to be happy, and it's supposed to take both people. In that marriage, in that horrible marriage, he was happy. He was content. He ignored her entirely.
Right. One of those people was happy, and so she wants to leave because she was unhappy. And now he's unhappy with this situation, so he wants to change this situation because one person is happy and one person isn't. It's the same thing.
No, I'm not gonna say his unhappiness doesn't matter, but the divorce is done. In order to stay in a marriage, both people have to agree. And if one person wants to stay married, but the other person doesn't, the court's not gonna be like, oh, well, he still loves her, so you can't leave. But that's like going into abortion territory where it's like, well,
So she has a kid, right? Or she's pregnant, right?
yeah, yeah. And he says that it's his baby. And they all looking at him like, yeah, okay.
I mean, you don't know.
He says it's his. They say more than likely it's not. So it's left to interpretation.
Mhm.
But, to me, he doesn't seem like I'm not gonna say I hate the guy because I don't hate the guy. I hate aspects of him, but I think like every person in this film, he was flawed. But I think that's the beautiful thing about the film.
He was flawed, sure. Yeah, he has flaws.
There's no question about it. I don't know why he's saying it in that tone. He was definitely flawed.
I want to consider things before I agree with you.
All right.
There's a stereotype, right, that you'll see.
You just accept 1981.
Why she didn't want to accept, I don't have to accept. Reality as it is. The reality of the situation was that she was, in a marriage and she decided to change it because she wanted to be happy, and he's doing the same thing. But there's a stereotype, right?
No,
There's
no,
a
no,
stereotype
no.
that-
We about to get into this.
Okay.
If you were to get divorced, you're married,
Uh-huh.
right? Let's say hypothetically.
Exactly.
I sincerely hope this doesn't happen.
I know.
You wake up and your wife looks at you and she's like, I want a divorce.
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
And she explains to you and she gives you the paper and she
That I've
says
been a
that
terrible person for 10 years.
she has no love, none. And then you guys are sitting in court and you get divorced. How are you gonna view her?
If we're sitting in court,
How are you gonna view her decision to get divorced from you?
I would be confused if I'm taking my own life experiences, if it was,
Okay.
tomorrow,
That's fair.
because I see myself as someone who would be able to see it coming.
I'm sure most people do.
I'm not 100% robot.
So would you feel any anger towards her?
You know what I would feel? I would feel like I would feel like I could fix it. B, I would feel like even if I can't fix it, I have to give it my all to try to fix it.
So would you sign the papers?
No, I don't think I would. If I woke up
Oh, you
tomorrow,
wanted it. All right. You wanted him, boy. You a Dodger. You a Dodger. You the person that's at your job and the person show up and you ducking and dodging.
here's the reason that you have to sign the papers, because it's supposed to be a mutual decision. So the relationship is supposed to be mutual in much the same way that the divorce is supposed to be mutual. So if she wants to leave the relationship because one person is unhappy, then that's one person making a decision for two people, right? Just like a divorce is, you're supposed to be two people making decisions. In a marriage, you're supposed to both say I do. In a divorce, you're both supposed to sign the papers.
What do you think happens if mediation doesn't work?
Well, to me, and tell me if you think that this is an unhealthy thing for me to say, but sometimes with my son, he'll be like, "Hey, can you help me? I can't do this." And I'll be like, "Well, did you try this? Did you try this?" And he's like, "Oh, I tried." Right? And sometimes he'll say, "I tried," and I'll be like, "Well, what that sounds like is you gave up." Because he comes to me a lot and he's like, "Oh, can you do this? Can you do that? Can you?" And I don't want to just do everything for him.
Did he actually try? Did you see him trying?
Well, there's degrees to trying, and sometimes there's
Yeah, but
trying.
who are you to necessarily decide all the time if someone tries?
It's hard. I don't want to be the one that decides, but if I see someone who's not trying as much as I think they should, then I feel a necessity to point that out.
There's a fine balance.
Yeah, sometimes somebody's trying and sometimes people are just really bad at stuff. But sometimes people try, air quotes, we're on radio, right? Air quotes. Sometimes people try and they're not really giving it, the old college try. Okay, so what I said before was that A, if this situation were to happen, A, I'd feel like I could fix it. And B, even if I can't fix it, I have to try. Giving up is easy. So when you see somebody or you see something happen and someone is giving up, you shouldn't make that judgment for everybody. Where it's like, oh, did you try enough? Did you put in enough effort? You shouldn't make that judgment for everybody.
But you know that you not giving up is you ignoring how the other person feels and focusing on yourself. You're putting it through a lens of, I love this person this much. I refuse to give up on them. But that's so short sighted and that's in
Is
your
it
own echo chamber.
is it not a similar decision to divorce someone, to say like, oh, I'm gonna give up on this relationship, whatever them be damned, whatever their emotions and their future is like, I don't care. Isn't that the same thing?
No, not to me. No, it's honestly not. If you wake up and you look at someone and you don't feel the way that you felt before, you just don't.
We were talking last recording about passions. Maybe not last recording, but we were talking some days ago about passions and how isn't something you just wake up and you don't have it anymore, right? If you do, then it wasn't a real passion. That's one thing you said.
I do think I said that, and I don't know if I would agree with that. I think that was just me overspeaking, to be honest. It doesn't seem fair. Like
Right, because you
sometimes
can't tell the future. Nobody can tell the future. But even though we can't tell the future, we still make promises, for better or for worse. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if we're going to wake up one day and not have passion anymore. But we don't say, "Hey, I'm going to marry you," until one day when I just find somebody else who, makes my heart thump harder. Makes that promise. I mean, some people do. That's a prenup, right? But that to me, that's not what the promise is about.
that seems very belittling.
Of pre, it is. I'm sorry, prenups.
It's weird, man, because it feels like you're so open minded with a lot of stuff, and when it comes to this, you have this extreme. It's like a blood oath, bruh. It's like you're a part of the Vampire Brotherhood. I just feel like you're very judgmental.
Yes, I am. Here's why. I believe, because most societies, but the one I live in, especially, and the one I think definitely that the movie exists in, believe that it's the natural course of every human being to like find someone to settle down with and start a family, right? Get married, white picket fence. That's what everybody assumes, right? And I don't assume that. I don't believe that it's up for most people. I don't believe most people should have kids. I don't believe most people should get married. I don't think that's necessarily for most people. Most people just assume that that's what that's for everybody. Uh, I don't. I think people assume that, and that's why they get married, and they shouldn't. I think people should think more about it. I think less and less it's becoming a necessity. But here's the thing I think a small amount of people, small is relative, it doesn't really mean anything, but I think not as much people who are getting married should get married. I think it should be a big deal, and if it's not a big deal, why are you getting married?
I don't want to like speak in the echo chamber. You're saying that marriage is sacred.
But
I understand how you feel about it.
mhm.
I just think you see June as selfish.
So if I'm in the court, and you said the people in the court don't really understand her, right? But if I'm in the court and I look at the facts, she not only cheated on her husband, which I think is something you can move past in some marriages, but also lied about him being abusive, which I think is a worse offense, right?
Which she didn't stick to her lie. I think that should be noted. And she
Yeah,
said why she
that's
made it up.
that's
Because
good. Yeah,
clearly everything is stacked against
it's
me. I
never
know
too
what I
late to
did.
say you're sorry, right?
You don't have to say you're sorry. That's the thing. You can just keep
Okay,
lying
but
away. So I think that deserves
yes,
credit.
admitting the lie is a good thing. I should give her points. But what I'm saying is, if I look at the two sides of the argument, he sounds like the more reasonable one. Like, regardless of my own personal feelings about marriage or whatever, looking at what they did to solve this problem, obviously he didn't see as much that there was a problem, but looking at what they did, their transgressions, the good things they did, the bad things they did, he sounds more reasonable than her. His sins were of ignorance and lack of action, right?
I'm not condoning June's actions as far as like the cheating and stuff. I'm saying
I'm
I
just saying her
understand.
actions are worse than his. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, if you're looking at the law,
Well, even
yeah,
if you didn't
he's
write the
definitely
laws,
getting.
different countries have different laws, but regardless of what country I'm in, if I look at the situation, I'm going to think she's the bad guy.
I'm not thinking that she's the
I
bad
know
guy.
clearly
I'm
you're
thinking
not
that
thinking
her
she's the bad
actions
guy.
were wrong. I'm not, but I'm not condoning her. Like I feel like you keep harping on that. I'm not condoning her actions.
Well, you're condoning one action, her leaving.
Yeah, I'm condoning her divorce. Do you think that if a woman is unhappily married, that she should have to stay in
There
the
are,
marriage? If the
and this
guy,
is
let me finish. If the guy wants to stay married, he loves her, just like June's husband, and the
Mhm,
woman is unhappy in her marriage, do
mhm.
you think that she should be required to stay?
There are times when
Yes
I
or
think
no?
the answer
Yes
would
or
be
no?
yes, and there
Yes
are
or no?
times when I think
The
the
guy
answer
the
would be
guy is
no.
not physically the guy's not physically beating her. He's not doing none of that. She's just unhappy in her marriage.
There are times when I think the answer would be yes, and there are times where I think the answer would be no. And I think it would depend largely on how hard it would be to fix what's broken, and it's hard to tell what can be fixed without trying to fix it.
What are the times of no? Give me some examples.
Um, well, for instance, like the extremes, there's the obvious extremes, but even not going to the extremes, if they were to try and fix it and it just seems like, no, this is never going to be fixed, I would say, yeah, it makes sense sometimes
But the
to,
guy but no, I'm saying that the guy loves her. He's never gonna stop. He's never gonna give up.
well,
So you're the judge, and let's say you the judge with just the supreme deity power. So
mhm.
you just like
Here's what I'm
you
saying.
either I decide answer my
Yeah,
scenario.
no, I want to answer your scenario, but here's the thing. there are multiple scenarios. Like earlier, you said, "Oh, me in my marriage, if this happened," and then obviously we're watching the movie, and that's another scenario. And now you're bringing this third scenario, which I have the least amount of facts about, right? But what I'm saying is, in this instance, in the movie, I would say they should probably stay together for longer and trying to fix it. And I would say, in my instance, they should probably try and fix it, see what went
You
wrong,
mean
right?
your instance for
Me personally, my marriage, right?
okay, and
And
now let's
then
go.
this, and then obviously I said, like an extreme example, if there's physical abuse, I would.
No, no, no. I don't want any physical abuse. I said there's no
Me neither.
physical abuse. There's no physical abuse. And you said, well, sometimes it's yes or no.
Yeah,
And I
sometimes
said
it's.
there's no physical abuse or any extreme examples. So give me an example of what would be no.
Well, see, to me, it has to do with like if you were to see like a psychologist, if you were to see professionals, and you'd hash it out because it's a very thin line. Like you're saying, hey, what about this other instance? But I'd have to know the details of this other instance to make that decision.
But I'm asking you. You said there
Make
are
the
some
details
times
up.
where it's yes or no. So I'm asking you to make the details up, but avoid physical violence.
Make the details up when it should be no, that they
Yes,
wouldn't
when it
stay
should be
together.
no. No, no that they can't get divorced. No, you can't
Oh,
get
know
divorced.
that they can't get divorced.
Yeah.
Well, I would say the default position should be they should try to get together until such time that such detail, and if I'm trying to come up with a detail that would come up to where they're never gonna, hash it out. Maybe, um,
Keep in mind the guy doesn't he's like you. He does not want divorce.
the guy's me, then they should never know. No. I think you could designate psychological abuse. There's a lot of different kinds of abuse, right? I realize I'm not an expert, so this may come off as ignorant, but I don't think when I think of psychological abuse, the first thing I think of isn't like not being there.
You mean like mentally and physically or just
Yeah, if he's working late a lot, or if he goes to sleep early, or if he doesn't know how to talk all that much, like that doesn't sound like the same thing to
that
me as.
counts? This is interesting. Have you ever been to court?
Yes, I've seen court cases. I've never been the defendant in a court case.
Have you ever you've done jury duty, yeah?
No, I wish I had done dirty, dirty.
I don't even remember why I brought that up.
Because I was assessing the details of when something might be considered abuse. That's why I brought it up. Psychological abuse.
Um,
To me, it's not the same.
okay.
Um,
So you wouldn't get picked for jury duty because when it starts, it says, "Can you see that economic damages are not the only thing that should be taken into account when it
I
comes to"
100% believe economic damages aren't the only thing that should be taken into account. I take
right,
things into
but
account. I
that
just don't maybe
qualifies.
don't value them as highly as maybe you do.
That's what it's gonna ask you. It said,
Yeah,
"Can you see this as equally as important?" And as soon as you say no because you're honest, they're gonna be like, "All right, dog, enjoy your day. Have a nice day,"
I'm
because
transient
you're
enough.
biased.
I'm transient enough that I gave up on the possibility of me ever serving on jury duty a long time
Why would
ago.
you want to do that anyway?
It sounds super fun.
It's depressing.
You get locked in a room with a whole bunch of people that are forced to spend time with you and make a decision with you, and you all have to agree. That's like my heaven.
Anyways,
So,
I
June,
I knew you when you robotic ass. You,
what?
bro. This is why I always say I know I'm disrespecting you, and I'm sorry. I am. I am sorry. I want you to know from the bottom of my heart that I am trying to find a better way to say it. But
No, you don't have to.
this is
I can take
why
it.
I felt like there's like a block in your brain for certain things, it seems like, as an outsider. And it's not even that you're not agreeing with me, because I feel like sometimes people might be like, oh, you just want me to agree with you. And it's like, no, I just want you to understand where I'm coming from because I feel like I understand where you're coming from.
I think I understand where you're coming from. You don't think I understand what you're saying?
If I'm to be honest, I think that you're extremely biased in this regard.
I am, but I can still understand what you're saying.
Then that's it. You just said you are. I didn't think you realized that you were. That was my issue.
Okay.
That was it. So we
That
can
was
move
it.
on. Like I truly felt like you thought that you was just not biased at all. And I'm
Like
like,
I had the universal truth of the world. Is what you're
yes,
saying.
yeah, yeah.
No, here's what
Okay, we
I'll
can
say.
move on.
Here's what I'll say.
Yeah, I don't
Uh,
mean to silence you, but shut your ass up. But go on.
okay. No, no, no. We can go.
No, seriously, I want to hear what you have to say.
Well, because I was gonna say, in situations in the past, I've had strong opinions about things that my friends, and I always had more female friends than guy friends. And in the past, there have been situations that my female friends will be in. And I'll be surprised by, I have an instinct to want to comfort people. I've had it a lot where I'm like, I wouldn't want to be in that situation that you're in. I don't think I would have put myself in that situation where you're in. And had I just been a stranger on the street walking into this situation, I wouldn't be on your side. But because I know you, you're my friend, I'll be on your side. I'll fight whoever you want me to fight. I think that's an aspect of friendship. But at the same time, I want to be able to think outside myself and be like, I'm doing this because I care about this person, not because I think, this is the universal truth of the world just because I'm doing it. I want to see a movie and think like, oh, I feel bad for her. She seems like she has a hard life. But think outside myself and be like, but that doesn't mean she's, and I know this is for lack of a better term, I don't think she's the good guy, you know?
Okay.
I think I'm trying to counterbalance what I see a lot of people going towards. And I think a lot of people, obviously, sometimes you should do things that make you happy. And sometimes you should stick it out and do something even if it doesn't make you happy, right? But to me, it seems like there's a lot of times when you're made to be like, oh, this is going to make them happy. They should steer more towards happiness. I don't think that's necessarily the direction we should be going. I think people have forgotten the value of like sticking it out a lot of the time, and not in the movie, not in the culture that the movie takes place in, but in terms of maybe most of the movies I see.
But don't you think you're applying that to this film, though? It's something that we just don't agree with, and that's totally fine. I want to wrap up on June. How did you feel about Fumi?
Well, that's funny you should ask because I thought she was probably the character, and I feel bad.
You least gave a shit about. Am I right or am I right?
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say it a lot more elegant. Here's what I'll say, and I don't know why. Maybe we can hash out why. But her husband was. It's hard for me to like. Her husband was the husband I liked the least.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, because like, so the other husband, June's husband, for some reason, maybe it's I don't know, it's his face or something. Something about him I liked, and he is very robotic.
Y'all
Right?
twins. That's why.
He was very robotic, right? And I appreciate that because sometimes there's a strength in being robotic. I'll see a movie where somebody's crying in their car, and then they wipe the tears off, they get out of the car, and then you can't even tell they were crying, and they go to work, and they're immaculate
Bro, that was
professionalism.
Sakurako's husband. He cried for a second, then he got up and he kept it moving.
Right,
You made
but
fun of him.
well, because I just didn't like the way that scene was shot.
All right.
But Fumi's husband, like I felt like, and I think this is a testament maybe to the actor. I said that the women were better actors than the men, but every time I saw Fumi's husband, I was like, this guy is such a dope. you know,
Why?
whenever he, whenever
Do you
he's
just
on,
not like the way he look?
maybe it's the way he looked, but so his situation is very similar to June's husband, where they just didn't get it. Right? Why is the wife happy? I had no idea. I made eggs that one day 5 years ago. Right? Um, they both have this same thing, right? But I felt like, and again, maybe it's a testament to his acting. I felt like he could have, if he tried harder, like seen the things that he's supposed to see, but he's just not trying. Whereas I felt like June's husband, he was kind of dealt a bad hand. Like he was not given the proper tools to figure this
It
mystery
was
out.
who dealt him the bad hand? Was it June?
Genetics and life, and I don't know his life story, but it seemed like it was an honest mistake to him when I was watching him. That's the way
Okay.
his portrayal came off to me. And Fumi's husband, I was like, you it's kind of like when you watch someone, we were talking earlier about effort, how you're not supposed to judge people's effort, but sometimes there's clearly not a lot of effort put into something. Like it's easy to see. And he did not see it. He was like, oh, what do you mean? Oh, I guess she is kind of pretty, isn't she? You don't mind if I go spend some time with her alone without you for something. Like such a guy that's not paying attention versus a guy that just is blind. Like a blind guy not seeing you and bumping into you, you're not going to be mad at him. But if the guy has like 20/20 vision and he bumps into you, you're going to be like, what the hell? You were walking in a straight line for like 20 feet and I haven't moved.
Buddy, I feel like this is the most biased I've ever heard you be.
I'm just trying to I'm just trying to express how dumb he seemed versus I feel like there should be another word other than dumb for Jun's husband.
All right. I did not expect this response.
If you're watching it, does he not look dumb to you?
No, he doesn't. I
Oh,
think what it
okay.
is like sometimes when dudes got long hair,
It's the hippie haircut.
people just be hating, bro.
He's got an unkempt beard kind of thing going on too, but it also seemed like his mouth was kind of just minimally open in a lot of scenes for no reason.
You just
Like,
don't like the way he looked. You don't like it has to be his hair, bro, because people be hating on dudes with long hair, you know?
Mhm. But the way they dressed him, I felt like I maybe wouldn't be the only person that got what I was supposed to out of their presentation of the character. There's so many scenes, and I think we do get more of those scenes because the author that he's working with is a character in the movie, right? As opposed to whoever the hell uh, Jun slept with, and her husband. We don't see a lot of that history, but we see scenes of Fumi's husband, like with the author, and we see her talking, oh yeah, that's him, and like we see scenes where I'm like, you could have made that decision a better decision, whereas we don't see those scenes with the other guy.
What scenes?
He's like spending all this time with her, and we see him spending time with her, and we see what it does to Fumi, and then they have discussions, Fumi and her husband. There's that scene you see her face when the guy is walking with the girl and they see her. The friends are all together,
Yeah,
and
we
then
see
there's this.
it. Do you think he saw it from
Well,
all the
he
way
didn't see
across
it in
the
that
fucking
scene,
area?
but that was before the reading, right?
I think the reading was where, don't get me wrong, I think he probably should have paid attention. I will say that Fumi, to me, with Fumi, I think it's something that I would have picked up on.
If you were her husband,
Yeah, I think it's something I would have picked up on, but if I'm being honest, I wouldn't have picked up on it super soon. I wouldn't have been like June's husband for 20 years in the game talking about some I love you.
I would have picked. I think I have to say I think because maybe
Yeah, you
I'm
never
wrong,
know.
but I think I would have picked up on it super soon, and I want to pick up on it. That's why, because I pay attention to these things so that if there's a situation, I'm not blindsided.
But for the majority of the film, June was the woman where if you asked her what was wrong, she would say nothing.
Well, here's another thing about June, or not June.
Yeah, I said June. I'm sorry. I meant Fumi. I apologize.
Right, but Fumi throughout the whole, like June kind of had this anger to her, it seemed like to me. And then Fumi kind of had this sadness to her. So I imagine if I was to ask Fumi, like if she was my wife, and I'd be like, hey, do you mind if I go have drinks over here with these people? And I ask her and I look at her face and she gives me that Fumi face, I'd be like, you know what? I can stay home. It's fine. Because, she has these long, depressing, just staring off into the distance looks, and it's like, clearly we have to talk about something. I might not have any idea what it is she wants to talk about.
All right, but you can sense something's off.
Fumi's a situation where her friends are all there and they're like, everybody knows this is a bad situation. They know that this is the type of situation that would bug somebody. And they're like, and she's got a power. Of course, she's going to
The
say,
situation you're talking about is her husband with the young novelist.
right. Yeah. What other situation is she going through?
I don't know, man. It would seem pretty fucking stressful with that dude that was the fucking seminar instructor. He was fucking annoying business wise.
Yeah, he was not fun. He's not the most fun guy to work with, I would imagine.
Him being there was hinging on so much. That shit's stressful.
Yeah, and I did appreciate the stress that it felt in the movie, how like because you go to Akari's job and she's a nurse or whatever, and there's some stress of like, oh, you got to give the right meds and you got to do this stuff. But it always felt like just scenes, whereas Fumi's jobs felt like, and it was because she's dealing with other characters in the movie. Like she's working with her husband, she's working with the artist guy, she's working with the author. So because those characters are integral to the plot, it felt more real. But I appreciated her being stuck in this situation where it's like, this sucks, but this is my job, so I have to keep going. I felt like you're supposed to feel that for like Akari sometimes, but I didn't feel as immersed in Akari's life as I did Fumi's job.
It's funny because I think Akari had a lot of screen time, but I don't think the film put her story into the biggest perspective because I think her story was the most easily digestible.
Yeah, it's the story that you can tell with the least amount of screen time.
Akari's story doesn't require a lot of experience when it comes to looking beneath every layer.
Right. But so in the end, when she goes off with the artist guy,
Yeah.
what was she thinking there?
What do you mean? What was she thinking? About to have herself a good time.
Is that it?
I mean, in a sense, Akari is the salary woman. Sakurako says something. Fumi, Sakurako, and Akari are having like a short impromptu coffee meeting, and they're talking about June. And they're like, "Oh, she's going through a divorce." And Akari's like, "I can't believe her. She wants to hide. I can't believe she wouldn't tell us. She's not being a good friend. She's not a friend if she's gonna be like that." And you can see Sakurako's face just turning red, just getting annoyed, while Akari's just going on and on and on. This punk motherfucker want to lie and stuff. La, 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 la. And Sakurako's just sitting there patiently. And then Sakurako's like, "Why would anybody, anyone, want to open up to you when all you can do is judge people through your lens? Why would anybody want to confess anything to someone like you?" Akari's face, when she hears that, her face is just like, "Bitch." Akari says something, and then Fumi interrupts, and Fumi's like, "Akari, June did the things that she did. Sakurako feels how she feels. You feel how you feel. That's it. Sometimes that's just it." And then Akari looks at her, and essentially, she's pretty much like, "Oh yeah, because you just just internalize everything, just never speak up. Shut up," and gets up and leaves. Mind you, I like all of the women, but when I think about Akari, when Sakurako said that, she was right.
Mhm.
Akari can't respect anybody's decision unless it adheres to her morals or her values. And if it doesn't, then they're just wrong. It's either wrong or right. There's no in between with Akari. And at the end of the film, she grows. It's that aspect of her where she's seen to outsiders as strong and confident, but she's also a bit lonely. She's okay with her divorce, but she wants love. She struggles to get it because she struggles to open up, you know?
Yeah.
The scene where she hooks up with the instructor, before she hooks up with him, she has a conversation where we found out that the other girl was actually the instructor's sister, not his ex. And they're speaking about life and everything. There are a lot of moments in that scene. Akari goes and dances on the floor. It's like a release. In a way, she's kind of like Cameron from Ferris Bueller's Day Off, in the sense that she has all of this, I guess, inner trauma that dictates her personality. And there's another side to her that she forgot because she's guided by all the things that she doesn't face. So she is brash. Sometimes she's caring and she's kind, but sometimes she can be very judgmental and pushy to the point where she's pushing people away. And rather than reflecting on that, she just says, "Well, whatever, you guys are being stupid." And that dance scene, I think that's the most obvious. It's like the release of all of that and just letting go for a moment, just not being so wound up and enjoying yourself and being free rather than pretending to keep up that everything is perfect. And then after that, she's kind of in this state of limbo where that moment of freedom and euphoria is fleeting. And then she meets with his sister. I don't remember the full context of their conversation, to be honest. Essentially, it was a heart to heart on various things.
On love.
Yeah, and his sister kisses Akari, which I was like, "Oh." And then this totally is gonna throw off the tone, but I just have to say it. When her brother comes back into the picture and then he kind of carries Akari away and the sister's standing there looking, like why they do her like that?
I felt like that was the natural way their relationship works,
I was rooting for the sister. I thought she was gonna get her some booty, and no.
Well, I guess. See, I can understand why she didn't go with the sister. I didn't understand why she went with the artist.
There's a part of me that doesn't like him, but there's a part of me that does appreciate him too, you know? But that's what I enjoy. I enjoy layered characters. You know what I mean? Same with June's husband. I brought him up. There's more of me that don't like him, that's for damn sure. But there's another part of me that does like him. I liked him most when he interacted with the novelist.
Yeah, okay,
It's like, this
so
dude's fucking amazing. He asks some good
that
ass
was
questions.
amazing because, and that maybe might be even an even better scene than the workshop for me, because in the workshop I was 100% like of my brain was engaged, because like I said, it felt like the actors weren't acting, they were just going through this, and I felt like I was going through it too, because I was imagining how hard would that be for me, right? But then you get to this author reading moment, and the stage is set, where all these characters, you kind of already have history with them, you know where they are psychologically, mentally. And then the author starts speaking, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be amazing. This is going to be profound. And when she starts speaking, it's like this, to me, I know my journey is always different from yours,
That's fine.
but to me, it sounded like I was in a high school auditorium and there was like a talent show, and maybe there's some good acts, but they're high schoolers, whatever. And so I was listening, and at first I was like, is this a joke? Because it's funny to me. How she's just in this monotone voice, and she's talking about this stuff.
Oh my god. Do you remember the old lady that asked the question? She was like,
Yeah, that's the thing.
"You know why
Whenever
I'm laughing? Because when that old lady did that, I was like, oh, that's Mad
I
Cat."
was like, "Thank you," because the audience reaction was kind of telling me, like, "Oh, this is funny. I'm not the only one laughing." And then so you get the husband up there because they, and there's the fluster, and I like the awkward fluster of like, "Oh my god, this is so embarrassing. What are we gonna do?" I like that tension, right?
He saved the day. I thought he
So
was
they
gonna
get the
fuck it up.
husband, and I was like, "This is gonna just send the comedy over the top because he's the last person you should get to read into." Like, first of all, no human being on earth could read deeper meaning into what she said, and then you're gonna get this guy who can't even read his own wife, right? And then he gets up there. His first question is like, "Oh, what was the book called again?" or something. It was like this super lame question, and I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh my god, this is super awkward," and I love it. And then as he gets going,
He nails it.
like you really feel like he's opening up about himself and he's engaging, and I'm like, wow, like that's so amazing that this could speak so much to him, and I believed him. I was like, that doesn't happen often because a lot of times it's easy to end a scene on a joke, right? But to have like this scene where I'm laughing profusely and then you end it like seriously and I'm there heartfelt.
Your emotion just switched
You're right,
instantly.
right. To switch in that direction is what's amazing. I can't think off the top of my head of another experience that was like that. And it was him.
It wasn't him. It was Hamaguchi Ryusuke, the director.
It was June's husband, the Terminator.
That scene was phenomenal. And you know what? I liked her story. I loved her story. I truly did.
I mean, I look back on it now and I'm like, yeah, that's, innocence of youth and all this stuff. But when I was watching it, because she was so not, and she said, they talk later about how she doesn't want to be too sensational.
I think you explained all this perfectly. So I'm just going to reiterate. When he went in and they picked him, I had the same thing. I was like, oh God, no, why him, bro? Anybody,
Yeah,
you could have
yeah.
picked anybody else
So
in this damn
excited.
room,
But
bro.
only in the movies do you
But
get
I
this.
wasn't. Yours was like popcorn, smiling like, oh,
Yeah,
it's about to
I
be
was
real
ready to
cringeworthy.
go.
But mine was just like, oh, ay Dios mío, anyone else. I was stressing out. Like, he about to murder this poor girl's book reading. And he went up there, and when he started speaking, I was smiling the whole time.
Yeah, that was the best scene in the movie.
And when I was watching him be like, I guess the question curator or whatever for the event, and he went up there and he started talking and he started giving an analysis, and they were doing a bit of back and forth. I was like, I would have paid $100 to sit in and listen on this. I was that engaged. I was like, this is amazing. And when that little old Obachan asked that question, she's like, why are you reading that boring ass voice? I don't remember what the young woman said that was the novelist. I remember when she gave her answer, I'm not even making this up. I started clapping.
Yeah.
Even if you didn't agree with it, it was heartfelt, it was honest, and it was believable. Even when they were at dinner after the reading and somebody took her to task and they was like, these experiences in a book is like very whatever fake. It's not real. I don't agree with that. And then when Fumi's husband came to her defense, to Fumi's detriment of her marriage, when he came to the young novelist's defense, he was like, I like her stories because they're personable and it's how she feels. So even to you, if it's not realistic, and to all of us, it doesn't represent what love or life is actually like, to her, it does. And from here, I want to see her grow and I want to see how she changes, what she holds on to, and what she becomes. That's the beauty in it. I don't want her to try to do anything that doesn't feel like her to appease others. I want her to be her, and she is her, and that's what I love about it. I was like clapping again. I was like, yeah, you write your little inexperienced love story. You write it. I love
Yeah.
this movie.
I think the author is someone we can agree on.
Yeah, I don't like that when she was in the car. I mean, I get it. I get it. But I don't like
What do
it
you get?
when she told him that she liked him.
You know what I thought was interesting?
Did you agree with that? Her doing that?
That she said that? I thought it was a dumb thing to say.
Would you have said it if you were her?
No.
No?
No, I wouldn't. There's so many things I don't say that I'd like to say to people.
I would have asked to work with somebody else if it was that bad.
Here's the thing. Because there's a lot of movies that would have gone in the direction of like, she doesn't just come out and, hey, I love you, right? But they would spend enough time together that she wouldn't have to say it. So the right thing, especially for Fumi, obviously Fumi would have wanted the right thing to be what you just said, where it's like, oh, you know what, this is getting a little too hot and heavy. We should work with other people. Which isn't always, I guess it is always an option technically, but sometimes it's not really an option financially. But yeah, there was another thing that he says in that moment in that car where she's like, oh, you love her, don't you? Or something, right? And he's like, I think he says, of course I do. But he's like,
He didn't say, "Of course I do."
I think he says, "Of course I do," but he also says, like, it doesn't matter because, it's our relationship. He doesn't say this exactly. What I got was that, like, he's saying their relationship is a foregone conclusion. So it doesn't matter if he loves her or not. There's no point in, reiterating or reanalyzing. It's like, I have to love her. This is the life we're living in.
I don't think he said that.
What do you think he said?
You talking about when Fumi was questioning him at home?
No, in the car, when he's in the car with the author. Before she says, I love you, she's asking, does he love her?
She asked him directly.
Yeah.
I guess I just don't remember that scene then.
Oh. Well, I thought it was amazing when he said, there's no point in doubting, right? Do I love her? Do I not love her? That's not like a valuable question. And I felt like in the context of the movie, it's presenting it like a red flag. He's saying that because he doesn't really love her. But at the same time, I felt like that was, I could see that as a valuable opinion to have, where it's like, we don't need to rethink, do I love her? Do I not love her? Like, that's not going to bring a lot of fruit to this conversation. So it was interesting because I felt like I understood kind of where he was supposed to be coming from as far as, my opinion on what the movie's saying about him. But at the same time, how I could mean something different if I had said that. So it was funny because you asked me, you were like, would you say that? As if I was the author, putting myself in the position of the author in that car, he's a married man, blah, blah, blah. And so clearly I could say, like, I wouldn't have said that, what she said, but she's just dumb because she's young. But at the same time, when I was watching it the first time, I was putting myself in the position of him, thinking of all the times when, like, when would I realize I'm going down a wrong path and I should course correct? And I could point to a lot of times, like that scene in the car.
The most biggest F up that stands out in my head that he made when she was like, "Why are you coming back late?" And he told her everything, which he should have. But then the decision for him to like, I think he like went to a restaurant with her because she was sad or some shit. And he was like, "Well, I could see that she was down and didn't want to leave her like that alone."
Mhm.
Here's the thing: it's like I understand him doing that out of his marriage. It's fine, if somebody's down and they just need you to be there. Doesn't mean that you're gonna sleep together. Doesn't mean you're gonna kiss or hold hands.
Mhm.
They just need to be with somebody, okay?
Mhm.
But you married, big dog. You got a wife.
Here's the thing that I thought you were going to say, because it's kind of funny, because Fumi kind of felt like, and I've said this before, she kind of felt like she was sad the whole movie, right?
Yeah, I think that's just her face, bro.
So I felt, though, I mean, clearly she had something to be sad about, at least half the movie. I thought you were going to say how it's ironic because he's like, oh, I couldn't just leave her alone. She was sad. And he left his wife alone, and she was sad.
His whole mindset for her most of the time was, why is she so annoyed? It's like he was so focused on this novel and the release and everything
He
else.
didn't have a focused look.
You just don't like his hair, bro. It's
Okay,
fine,
no,
bro.
here's the thing. The hair
Just
is
use Pantene Pro
the
V.
hair.
You
The
can
hair
get
is
the
a reasonable
luxurious
thing,
gloss
but
up.
having your mouth open that much is a conscious choice for an actor.
You ain't never met nobody that mouth just agape just a little bit. You never met anybody like that.
No, I've met people that had their mouth open too long, and I, wanted to tell them, hey, that makes you look dumb.
You know what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna send you a picture of this actor every day. Every day. Let's say you go to work at 4 a.m. You know your wife wake up at 7 a.m. and you message her and be like, "Hey, love you," doing the cheesy romantic thing, right? I'm gonna do that to you, but it's not gonna be no love you. It's gonna be pictures of that guy every every day.
And his mouth's going to be open in every one.
I don't remember his mouth being open that often.
He opened his mouth. Other than the times when he was needed to say something important. Okay, I'm done.
So you didn't like June. I still don't know if you liked Fumi or not. I feel like we just talked about her husband.
I mean, she was fine.
Okay. Let's move on to Sakurako.
One more thing to say about June, okay? Because there's a scene at the end of the movie where you see her one last time before she fades off into the distance. In case you didn't notice how hilarious it was when she was waving goodbye. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Because it
When
was,
she waved goodbye to Sakurako's-san?
yeah,
What about it?
the hand was so clearly just placed in there from nowhere, and it didn't look like it fit at all, and it was such a weird
Oh no, I don't remember that.
animation. It was like they shot the scene and then days later editing it were like, oh no, I wanted her to wave. So they just like filmed somebody waving and then like photoshopped the waving
I
into.
don't like tempted to log back in the movie.
Yeah, go watch the whole 5 hours just for this.
You can fast forward, dude.
The whole movie leads up to that one moment.
I wish I would have wrote like a defining through line of how I felt. I didn't.
I think through line wise, there are movies that are well made, like the lighting and the music and the acting and the dialogue and
The mise en scène.
yeah. And there are movies that are well made, but then I get to the end of the movie and I'm like, but why did I watch that though?
That's how you felt about this?
No.
Oh, okay.
I was gonna say I probably The through line for me is that there are a lot of good things in this movie that I wouldn't think that highly of if they hadn't had those two scenes, the workshop scene and the author scene. To me, elevated it to the point where I was like, this is an experience I wouldn't have had I watched any other movie, so I'm very grateful to this movie for having them. Specifically, the author's scene fits nicely into the rest of the movie. I didn't feel like the workshop scene, and maybe it's just because it was the beginning of the movie and I didn't know what to expect yet. I didn't feel like it was that embedded.
I think the workshop scene was essentially what they became by the end of the film, breaking down all those
They
barriers.
found each other's center.
Pretty much, yeah. That's why I said you'll appreciate it by the end of the film if you didn't during it.
Yeah, and you know what? I think that's another thing that fuels my bias about June. I'm sorry.
Oh goodness.
Is that at the end of the movie, you have this touching moment where these women are like commiserating with each other, right?
Hmm.
And after all the like dark secrets that have come out and the fighting and the hurt feelings, people can now talk. They can communicate more freely when they're starting from a point of honesty. But it does feel sad that June left, so they're not going to get that ability to.
Feel like they're just never gonna see June again. Is that why I feel sad?
I mean, yeah, that is kind of sad, isn't it? Like, yes, I think that's sad.
Well, that's the thing is I don't think it's act like it's left off. They're like, we'll find June. I don't see June reconciling to the point where she's married with her former husband, but I do see all of the girls, the women, excuse me, reuniting. Whereas you don't.
I think she could come back, but I'm never going to see her again.
You just wanted her to be there in the finale.
Yeah, it would have been a nice. It's not. I mean, there's a possibility of a
I don't think
happy.
it would have fit.
No, it wouldn't have fit. But here's why I'm saying that. Because yes, they might find her in the future, but it feels sad when somebody leaves. You know, you might always find somebody again. Like I moved from Rome and then there was a girl I knew in Rome and then we moved away from each other and then I found her again in Japan. And that was like an amazing thing, but that's not necessarily always going to happen.
Yeah, no, of course. I don't know. I just didn't see it as sad. I
Cuz
was happy to see that the three of them. What'd you say?
they might be together again, but they might not.
Yeah, I'm just speaking from my perspective. I was happy that the three of them learned to listen to each other more and understand each other. I appreciated that a lot of their growth came from June's decisions and June's fearlessness. What I saw as fearlessness.
She was brave. I agree with you that she was brave.
You ain't gotta like June. I ain't tripping. It's nice that you agree with me on that, though.
But I agree with you. I'm allowed to agree with you.
No, you're not. Anyways, I was happy that June went to take time for June. I think the most comparable to June was Sakurako. For the longest time, to me, Sakurako was just a shell. I feel like she had ambitions, and I'm not like talking down on housewives or anything, but I felt like she set aside everything and gained what was supposed to be a husband and a son, but in reality, she was like your grandparent that just sits at home all day by themselves while everybody else is gone.
Sakurako, you mean? Is that who you're talking about?
Yes, I'm talking about Sakurako. When she cheated, I was like, I get it. I'm not saying that you made a wonderful decision, but I'm saying I get it. She just was robbed of happiness. She was like a zombie almost at a lot of points. And it was really sad to see. Not to say that other things weren't sad as well, but Sakurako's story is extremely easy to sympathize and empathize with.
Because she has a kid.
When he did what he did, I was like, maybe it's good I'm not a dad.
What?
Obviously, I wouldn't have done this, but in my head, I would have been like, "Oh, put on these boxing gloves because we about to throw them hands." But in reality, I would never do that. But honestly, if I was in that situation, how I think I would act, I would have to excuse myself.
Why? So angry?
Yeah, and I wouldn't want to like blew up on my son, so I just would have walked away.
Hmm.
After like 3 hours, I would have came back and be like, "All right, big dog, time to talk." Flop down on the couch. That would be something that I couldn't address right then and there.
Would you call your son Big Dog?
Yeah, I call everybody big dog.
No, I noticed it's just that sometimes I imagine as a son it can be nice when you have a name that your father doesn't use for everybody else. Anyway, so the son, do you think you could say because the father was so absent that that's partially why this was allowed to come to be?
Yeah, I don't think it was just the dad. I think it's the dad and the mom.
Yeah, and
But I
that's
mean,
what
it's like they could do the right thing. They could be in his life and he still could have did that shit. That's the scary thing
possible, but
about kids.
less likely, isn't it?
That I mean, I don't know. No, it's not less likely to me. No. It's only less likely if you block access from all internet and social media. Then I'm like, okay, yeah, it's less likely.
No, I mean if you just keep a kid down in the basement and lock the basement,
You get Sakurako.
then you're almost assured that you're not going to have like a whoopsie baby. But I'm not talking about almost assuring it. I'm talking about the more work you put in, the more you communicate with him, and the more you tell him and commiserate with him
Hmm.
and work with him to do the right thing, the less likely, like every step that you make in the right direction is a step away from the likelihood of this happening, right?
No,
No.
I'm saying no. I'm also saying that just because I'm saying no doesn't mean that you should not do all those things. You
Why?
definitely should do all those things because that's your responsibility as a parent.
But why is it a responsibility if it's not going to do anything?
It's weird because you're asking me a probability, but I'm giving you an answer. I'm saying that it's not probability favored in the outcome that you want. Then you're asking me a definitive. You're saying, why should you do it if it's a definite no? And I'm not saying it's a definite no. I'm saying it's 50-50, regardless. Am I making sense?
Regardless sounds like it's 50-50 whether you do the right thing or the wrong thing.
But you should still go about doing what you feel is best.
But to me, the right thing is the thing that will more likely bring about the right conclusion.
The conclusion is he could either get a girl pregnant at a young, stupid age like he did or not. Jeffrey Dahmer's parents said that they were the best parents ever, and maybe they were. That motherfucker still ended up Jeffrey Dahmer.
Yeah, but it's not 50-50 whether you end up Jeffrey Dahmer, right?
Who knows? I think every little kid has the potential to be a serial killer.
Yeah, but 50% of the kids don't end up serial killers.
Maybe you just never heard about it. You ever saw Children of the Corn?
They'd have to be really bad serial killers because, if 50 of the kids were doing it, there'd be a lot more dead people.
It's a toss up, man. It's a toss. To me, parenting is a toss up. That's the scary thing about it, but it is what it is.
I remember I had a conversation with a guy at work. We were talking, and he was getting upset with me because I was saying like, "Oh, sometimes things go bad. Sometimes you couldn't have predicted this would happen. You could do everything right, and there's no solution to the problem." And he was getting so
Are you
upset.
fiddling?
I'm sorry. He was getting so upset because he was like, "No," because he's a mechanic. He works on mechanisms, and so he was like, "No, if there's a problem, if you ran out of gas, it's because you didn't have enough gas. If there's the regulation of the electronics going around and they're not right, it's because this spark plug or this frayed wire, like there's a definitive reason why things happen. It's not like, oh, you couldn't have known." He wanted to impart on me that it's not like that people do wrong things because of there's reasons.
Yeah, there are reasons why people do wrong things.
And you might not know what the reason is, but that doesn't mean you couldn't have prevented it. It doesn't mean that there's not, by doing the right thing, you couldn't have, brought about a different conclusion. That's cause and effect.
There's not gonna always be a solution.
Oh, as far as through lines go, that's another thing that I was thinking about when I was watching this movie. It seems like a pattern I see with you and movies that you like.
So here we go.
That there's
Go on.
But you seem to gravitate towards stories where there's an idea of, oh, there's no easy answer. There's
You
no
already said this. You said this like in 3 different episodes. I know because I edited them. Where there's gray.
right. And you seem to love that. And one of the things for me, and I'm probably said this in the other 3 episodes too, is that when I see a problem in a movie, I'm always trying to think like, oh, well, what else could you have done? Right.
Right.
And Daikie's not really a main character in this movie, so I can't do that with him necessarily because I didn't see enough of him.
Mm-hmm.
I do agree with you that I would say the reason this happened, maybe not the only reason, but the biggest reason that I could see that this happened is because the mother and father were too hands off,
They was all roommates.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's likely that if they had been more hands on, if they had been closer with their son, that they could have prevented this from happening.
Yeah.
I think that's a reasonable thing. I think
it's reasonable too. I'm saying it's a possibility. You saying it's likely, I'm saying it's a possibility. Go on.
But it just seems like you like the idea that, oh, you never know.
In that regard, no. I don't want to have no kid. And I don't sit. If
Well,
I
not
have a
for
kid.
you, of course, but you like portraying that in movies where it's showing people that, like, the uncertainties of life.
Because I think life is full of uncertainties. And I think that people just say to make them feel better, to hug their ego or their sensitive brain. I think there are plenty of solutions. I think there are plenty of scenarios where there is a solution. We just don't know it yet. But I also think there's plenty of things where it's just the gray. It's not like I don't like films that are just black and white because I do, but I intrinsically feel that if you're a talented writer and you write a black and white story versus if you're a talented writer and you write a black and white and gray story and both writers are of equal talent, I feel that the story with the gray is probably going to have a lot more depth to it than the other. That's not to say that the other can't say things that are inspiring because it can. It's just the other one is going to have a bit more meat on it.
You're probably right.
So it's not like these are the only films that I like, but when I watch a film, it's a time commitment, especially this 5-hour movie. And I don't want to walk away feeling like I tolerated it. I don't want to walk away and be like, man, it was all right. I want to take something from it. I don't have them anymore, but there were so many little lines that characters would say in this film that I wrote down because I thought it was so well written, excuse me. And this is not talking about you, but I think that in general, I put a lot of stock into things like film and anime and music. I know the threads that I believe will lead to something being either good, great, or extraordinary. And there are times when I was wrong. You know, I avoided JoJo's Bizarre Adventure forever. And then finally, for some reason, I just chose to watch season 1 and 2. I thought season 1 was like dumb fun. And I watched season 2. And season 2, again, is dumb because JoJo's dumb. But I love it. I love that shit. I mean, that's a bit off topic, but if anything, whatever filming service I have, streaming service I have, it always opens up a category of films with a strong female lead. And I do feel like I'm more inclined to watch films with a female lead because most of the films that are very layered and have a lot of depth tend to be female leads. It can totally be males. I've seen some with males. Maybe it's because of studios or whatever. Maybe they feel like men aren't going to go out and see these films. Toxic masculinity is a thing. But I just feel like the more layered stories that have depth and a richness and contextualities happen to have female leads more so than males. What did you feel when your favorite character, Fumi's husband, when he got into that car accident? How did you feel?
I felt like, oh, another stunt done off screen. That was jarring. I didn't fully understand at first what had happened because he has long hair. So I was like, which one of the women is that?
Bro, shut up.
It took me a while to figure out what, because I was like, why are we seeing this random car? And then you see Fumi later in the hospital and they talk. So eventually you're like, oh, her husband, she feels bad by giving him the key. But when they first meet in the hospital, they're talking vaguely. And I'm like, who was hitting the car? It took me a while. It was hard for me to get into it. And I don't want to be one of those people that's like, oh, you should have Tom Cruise stunts in every movie, so that I can, for me. But
They needed to show some stuff.
yeah, this is a scene where I think it could have helped to show what happened, at least a little bit, or to even have because there wasn't even any visual cue. She falls on the floor, and then it's silent for an awkward amount of seconds, and then there's a truck on the scene, and the truck backs up, and there's a car, and I felt like you could have had it more poetic, where it's like most movies, I think what they would do is she would fall on the floor and she's silent and motionless, and the sound all of a sudden you'd hear the crash, right? Even while you're in this completely different place, right? Most movies would do
It's
that.
called a J cut.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Or an L cut. Sorry. Go on.
I didn't. That was my least favorite part of the movie, even though he was probably my least favorite character.
His name is Takuya, by the way. Because I kept calling him Fumi's husband. To me, this film is like fine wine, man. I'm pretty sure I'll watch it again in a year and I'm like, it's even better. This film really does paint an intimate portrayal of the lives of these women and these marriages in various circumstances. For me, it feels accurate. I'm a guy, so obviously I can't say it's definitely accurate.
It's definitely accurate.
It feels accurate and it feels honest and it doesn't feel too judgy. I think that this is something that for once people should just watch, and when you watch it, try to step outside yourself. Just try to take it in for what it is and step outside your preconceived notions and all your judgments and all of that. And just experience it. After you experience it, don't immediately try to formulate thoughts and go off and start rambling about it. Just let it sit.
Like I did.
I don't feel like you did, to be honest.
High praise. That's high praise coming from you.
It's not praise. Just let it marinate, man, for a couple days because I think it's worth it. I think it's a beautiful film and I loved it. I'll wrap it up there. I guess last question is, did your opinion of this film change in any way, shape, or form?
Um,
Remember, it's okay to say no.
I know. No.
In my opinion,
Yes.
I'm like running over everything that you said. No, but you did open my eyes a bit more to the group experiment scene. That's for sure. All right, that's happy hour. I watched it on Mubi. Watch it on Mubi. Don't go watch it on Amazon.
If you have a .edu email address, there's.
All right, that is it. We will see you next time.
Ciao. It also seemed like his mouth was kind of just minimally open in a lot of scenes for no reason. Like,